Ready to go?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is the Amazon best-selling author of The Definitive Testosterone Replacement Therapy Manual, How to Optimize Your Testosterone for Lifelong Health and Happiness. He is also the founder of TRTRevolution.com and the TRT Revolution podcast. He is also a former champion male physique competitor and co-founder of FabFitOver40.com, the #1 site on the web for fit over 40 information. Welcome back to the show, my friend, the man, Jay Campbell. What's up, brother?
What's up, Matt? How are you, brother? Thank you so much for having me on today, man. It's always a blessing to, as you. We're very excited today to group the Decoders of Truth. So, hey, everybody, Thanks for watching, for those of you who are watching live, and then for those of you guys on the replay. And honestly, today, Matt and I are going to really make this back and forth. This isn't going to be just so much about interview with me, but I'll be interviewing him because he just came back from Egypt. So we have amazing stuff to talk about. So, man, I'll send it back over to you.
Yeah, man. It's always good to see you. And, even just reading the bio the last time you came on, I was just getting to know you, and our friendships kind of blossomed from there. And, we talked about really deep stuff being on, your show, and you didn't talk about Decoders of Truth, the Leak Project, and you're really at the forefront of what is going on the planet as far as, what is real, when they talk about the veil being lifted and the awakening, it's about information, and you're basically in a confusion. That's what Maya is. You're confused because you believe one thing. Right. Could be Santa Claus is real, which I almost ruined for a little girl the other day by accident. It's so close. Luckily, my friend's mom was like, "Don't say it." I was like, "Oh God, that was close." But that's what this veil is being lifted, right? And so I'm so grateful to have found you and your work, and the amount of stuff you read and the people you talk to is phenomenal. So, I guess for somebody, that's coming in from my audience over to Decoders of Truth, you guys are next level. I love coming in there. I can sort out what's going on. From your perspective and all these guests, can you summarize a little bit of how you see things are going? Do you see things going in a positive route, although it's getting a little bit mischievous? Where are you at with that whole big picture scenario?
So my thoughts probably change by the week. It's a great question. It's really the only question that needs to be asked, honestly, in the world right now. I'd like to say, just to take a step back from a big picture angle, because it's such a powerful question. It's so powerful that about 2 weeks ago, and I hope Daniel Kelly is watching this, or I know he'll watch it in the rerun, but he might be watching it live from the UK right now. He's a good friend of mine. I personally mentor him. He's becoming one of the biggest names in the optimization space in Europe for guys under 35. Brilliant dude. But we decided that we were going to put a master thesis book together sometime in 2018. Now, obviously, I got to get through the book that I'm in right now, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But what we want to do, Matt, and I think this is going to be big, and obviously you'll be involved too, because when I tell you what we're going to do, you're going to want to be involved. But we want to interview the best esoteric authors in the history of mankind. Obviously, some that are alive today, and then some that are probably posthumously dead, people that are involved in their pushing their works on Amazon and all that stuff. So what we want to do is grab a working, thesis or a narrative of all of the greatest researchers. And then from their narratives and their mythologies or mythoses, we're going to just draft our own and work our own working narrative of what's going on planet Earth today. So I think the book will absolutely be a mind blower. I think it'll be a spectacular work and achievement to get all these great minds in a way that we can kind of collate their beliefs and their brains and then put it all into one working master document. And I plan on obviously interviewing you, a lot of people, writers, podcasts, and then just like I said, just collate all that information and put it into one thesis. But to your question, I honestly do think good things are happening. Everyone who knows me believes that or knows that I'm, for the most part, pretty much a glass half empty guy, because I like to be prepared. I always look at things from a positive standpoint. I know that the only thing that matters on this planet is love. But there's a lot of bad stuff going on this planet, and there has been for a long time. Centuries is not a long enough time probably. So from what I'm seeing, what my ears to the ground, the people I interview, there's some amazing accounts on Twitter that drop just knowledge bombs about like what's going on behind the scenes. But I really honestly do believe that whatever dark forces have been owning this planet for so long are on the way out. And there's just too many reports, from so many different areas, and we don't have to name names. We could say David Wilcock and his group, but there's just a lot of people behind the scenes that are just talking about how goodness is starting to overcome darkness. And so, the great philosophers, the great wisdom teachers, the great, esoteric researchers and writers always have said, and it's always been, spoken like this, that there's always darkness before dawn. I do believe that the bad guys, whoever they may be, and that's not even probably worth discussion here today. I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole if we wanted to. I think they got probably a couple of tricks up their sleeve, and what that might be, I don't know. I mean, I've been reading a lot in the last couple of weeks, really the last 4 days. We'll talk about my book in a minute, but I've been winding down, getting to the end, so I've had some time to read for enjoyment. And there's still a lot of people out there that say that Nibiru is coming. And it's really weird because it's actually in like large scale, non-Western media disseminators. And they're talking about like changes on the earth, like geodetic changes, volcanoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, a lot of shifting. And some of these people that are pointing it out are saying like, well, look, this is all disguise, the way they're wording things about how things are happening on the planet. But really what it is that this, inbound, whatever it is, brown dwarf star, again, there's a million names for it, is still coming, and it's still going to disturb the, everything, obviously our balance in the universe and stuff like that, and our magnetic spin and all of these things. And, obviously our gravitational field, and it's going to cause massive chaos and maybe death and, changing and tidal waves and all the different things that would happen geodidactically. But I don't really know, dude. I do think though, that this is a good movement. I hate labeling people like Trump and politicians and stuff from what we're seeing right now, but it does seem like there are people or maybe beings, behind the scenes that are up to good. That's my current belief right now.
Awesome, man. It's a great share. Thank you. Well, it opened up a lot for me because, I watched the one with you, Gerald, Matt, and you guys were talking about all these different things. I've heard about Nibiru coming. And so, I've heard on the other side from my friend Sandra Walter, who is like this multidimensional woman. She lives at Mount Shasta for months of the year, in awesome. Meditative states, connecting with ETs and stuff like that. And she's like, there's nothing to worry about anymore. There was, but she talked to me on a personal call on the phone because I'm helping her with some stuff. And she said, you got to watch out for the AI. And so this is just computer and stuff like that. Yeah. She's like, that exists. They're trying, but there's more benevolent forces. So then you've got the conditioning. One of the things that I consider going down the rabbit holes is how mother effing good the conditioning is. I'm like, right. Is this real, or is this like another setup? And then I'm super confident in this, and then all of a sudden I've chosen wrong, which is stressful. It's a bummer to think about. So where I'm at with it, for me personally, is that, one of the things people will need to accept is disclosure of other external forces of ET. So Decoders of Truth does not have a problem with that. Some people, it's going to be real painful, and
most people do, right?
Yeah, right. So we're past that. It's like it's coming now. One of the things that I've been hearing, and I don't know if you guys touch on this, is timeline shifts. So
Mandela effect, right?
Yeah, the collective consciousness. We can agree that it's affecting it. As people are thinking things, we're creating a reality as a collective. And then, so how do you feel about the possibility of it like fractaling into almost like a new earth paradigm of like Jay Campbell, and every individual has the right to create their own reality, although there can be any realities which exist now today, right? You could be in the army and at war. That would be intense. That would be a very intense experience. So me snowboarding in Whistler is a very different experience, right? Through my own choice. So do you see that kind of thing happening where maybe they exist and we have now the choice to move with a little bit more sovereignty, a little bit more freedom and cooperation to build a better planet?
I think it's a great question. Both your questions have been amazing. I mean, I can kind of harken back to the podcast I did with Shane Bales, who's also in the group, who's a brilliant guy, and he's from like the special projects and the research projects and stuff. So he's been like, like the My Labs and all this like dark, black, horrible stuff that's been going on for a long time, probably in the last 60 or 70 years. And so he knows a lot about what's going on in the world, but that's what his prediction is that literally like the species on planet Earth are going to diverge, and we're going to have two parallel life streams. We're going to have the people that say, chip me, I'll take the AI, wire it into my eyeballs of my brain. And then there's going to be the people, that choose the, human, root yourself in Gaia, stay sovereign to Mother Earth, those folks, which is probably people like you and me. And that there may be literally two parallel, human civilizations. And that's maybe where we're going. But as far as to like what you're saying, I mean, they have no question. And this is crazy that I admit this, because I'm writing about this in my book right now. But we can change our DNA. Okay. There's an amazing book that just came out by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I can't think of the name of the book. Becoming Supernatural. That's the name of the book.
He wrote a new one, Joe Dispenza.
It's his new book, dude. I mean, I've already read it, and I'm reading it the second time because it's one of the most powerful books. It's honestly, every single person who watches this podcast has to purchase that book and read it as soon as possible. That's how impactful that book is. I've actually given that book to some people that are completely asleep, mainstream news, provocateurs, and they've read it and they're like, wow, because I mean, Joe is really a non-woo-woo guy. He doesn't come from the world that you and I exist in. He comes from the real hardcore science, mainstream academia. And he's like now gone down this path, and he's basically taking that approach of the mainstream academic science approach and seeing, the world that we understand, which is obviously the quantum world, and merging them into a way that like anyone who has who's not awakened, whose soul is not evolved and can understand it. And so that's why I say, like, I always call him a baby seeker. If you're a baby seeker, you should be reading this book, because he's talking about concepts that anyone can understand and follow. And he makes it so easy to understand because he makes it so relatable. But anyway, the book is fantastic. But he proves literally, it's not theoretical, it's physiological, that we are changing our DNA, that we can program our minds and obviously our feelings and our emotional centers, our energy centers in our body. And he talks about all three of them. And obviously we could go down the chakra level stuff too, but that you can reprogram your DNA. You don't have to be born a certain way. I'll use like, in a fitness standpoint, someone who's programmed to be endomorphic, which is, slow metabolism, insulin sensitive, and fat. You don't have to be that way. You can choose through environmental, conditioning, changing your diet, changing your exercise and your movement patterns to be, like you and me, and be lean and healthy and in great shape. So there's this whole, like, you're born a certain way and you live that way forever. We have to get rid of that mindset. And honestly, I was taught that mindset. I mean, as you know, man, I'm a man of science. I mean, I have a science background. All my stuff that I write and I research is like heavily science-based. And so I've always been like, well, no, it's empirical, it's rational, I have to see it, I have to observe it. But now I realize it's not that way, that we literally have the ability to change and to manipulate our DNA. It's just through the power of our belief. How strong is your belief?
That's incredible, man. That's so good. Well, I love that you brought up Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I did his progressive, which to do that, you needed to do I think it was like a 15 or 20 hour online course. Did a 3-day progressive, and then I did a 5-day advance with him. And basically awesome. What you're doing is meditating all day. And the final day he does a Kundalini activation where you're pulsing the energy center. And what he's doing is recording with EEG scans. So people are having spontaneous healings. And this is like my road was an athlete, where I've taught an athlete to do a trick that's never been done before, and it was the same principle. He's like, I fell on a front flip and I want to land that front flip. And so after we did about an hour call, I was like, okay, dude, your mental game is fine. What you're going to do is you're going to visualize that trick an hour a day, every day, until you can land it. 2 weeks later, he lands a front flip on a motorcycle. 2 weeks after that, he lands the world's first front flip heel clicker on a motorcycle. 2 weeks after that, or 3 weeks after that, he lands the world's first front flip Superman on a motorcycle without practicing it once. A front flip Superman.
This is the guy that was in your book, right? You talked about it in your book, right?
Yeah. So that element is step one. So step two is Dr. Joe Dispenza. You're coming in there. You have a terminal illness. I'm going to die of cancer. Joe looks you right in the face and says, that doesn't need to be a reality if you choose it not to be. Sit your butt in meditation observe that reality, call it forth, and you're changing your DNA from the inside out. You're changing your reality inside out, and you're becoming a creator of your reality. So for me, when I'm teaching or talking, my whole thing is like, what's that infinite reality that's so good you would work your life towards? You know, what's that thing that's like, oh my God, and that's what you put in every single day. And so he's bringing the science out, which is amazing. I actually didn't know he had a new book, so I'm super.
It just came out literally. I got like a preview release. So one of my friends was like, look, it's so funny that I didn't know you knew him. But anyway, isn't it funny how the circles, there's no coincidences, right? But literally like about 6 weeks ago, one of my friends who knew I was writing this book, and you don't know about this yet, so I'll just let you know right now. But dude, this book has a huge chapter on spiritual fitness. So I'll send you some of the stuff, but a lot of what you wrote in your book at the beginning of the year that I read, I based my brain. I took a lot of your information as far as like what you have it, the way you structure it in your book. Cause I said your book is an amazing book. And I was like, okay, well, this is a book on hormone optimization for men and women, but how do I get spiritual fitness in it? Because it's so central to our lives living in this crazy matrix, right? So I took the way you did your book and I just collated it, and you'll see it, but it's only in chapter 16. It's about fitness. And it's the end of the section. And I even say, like, many of you are going to read this book and you're going to get to this point. You're going to be like blown away at how amazing it is on all the things we talk about. But now I'm going to let you know who Jay Campbell really is. So if you don't want to keep reading, skip to chapter 17, but read through here. And it's very powerful stuff. I mean, you'll see it. But I mean, obviously I had people like you who have seen it and they're like, wow, you're really going to put this in this book? And I'm like, I am, because it's who I am. But the reality is Joe is proven that you can change your DNA. And I wanted to just make a point because, dude, I am the product of changing DNA. Okay. Everybody knows my story. You know my story. But I mean, literally 5 years ago, I was in a jail cell. Okay. And now look at me. This is all conscious manifestation. Okay. I lost my wife, my house, my kids, my job. My kids were kidnapped from me. I was in jail, faced with all these charges, multiple felonies. And here I am now 5 years later. And this is all a process of conscious visualization and manifestation of seeing what I wanted and not stopping to not get what I wanted. Like this has just been literally a projection of who I want to be, and that I don't allow haters. I don't allow, low conscious stuff. I do. It's like, people ask me all the time, like, dude, how do you do all what you do? I've never seen a person that sends out so much, content and produces content and does all these things and so active and involved in, affairs and community events and all these things. And I just say, you know what, dude, I wake up every morning and I choose to do. I'm a man of action. I don't sit there and say, I'm going to do this, or I'll try to do this, or I might do this. I just do it. I don't always succeed. But anyway, I wanted to make that point because what you're saying about changing the DNA, we're all capable of this. How bad do you really truly want to do it? And then how fast can you actually put a plan together and follow it?
Amazing, man. I love that you added that in there. And I'm so excited for you to add the who I really am, because, the one thing that I wanted to share with people is that you are a beast when it comes to reading and research. It's ludicrous. I'm still working through the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East. I did get through almost Nassim's whole resonance program. I just have a little bit more to go. I got through Sandra Walter's Ascension Path, which is like meditations and things. And I got through a 920 breath decoding AI thing. I don't even know what it is or what I'm doing. It's awesome. I don't know what's going on, but I have massive respect for when you like, hey, read this book, read it. And so now where I think we're entering to, interestingly, is like, okay, we've got the science aspect, but then there's a spiritual aspect. So for me, it's like Zen athlete. Okay, do you want to be the best athlete? Look, come here and I'll show you the tools to do it. Right. Visualization, these processes, these work. You can't argue. Same with when you're doing fitness, you give them a plan, they execute it. But the spiritual sense is, you get existence as a human, and how do you have the most wonderful, joyous, expansive experience? So what matters, right? And so you can kind of get, I think in the past, we've been really locked into fear, and like, this is the way it's got to be. And all that kind of just mentality. And if you can't see it, you don't believe it because people are trying to trick you. So you're worried about getting tricked, right? Things like that. So where I want to kind of to go with this is because on your recommendation, I've been reading the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East. I've been referencing it over and over.
Amazing.
And I'm at the part in the book in 4 where it's talking about how the masters manifest through word, just word.
Yes.
And then they talk about essentially what they're saying is that when Jesus did it, or these ascended masters did it, it was, they put the word first, but they put like the spirit of the world, like God or nature or source.
I am that I am.
Right. So it's not like Jesus didn't go, no, Jesus, I did this. He's like, no, I grabbed God, the source, the all divine principle, and put that forward. Yep. So I was just wondering if you wanted to speak on just where you are, because when I look at Dr. Joe Dispenza stuff and people having miracles, I had Coop Blackson on, his dad. I don't know if you know who he is. He's been on my podcast twice. In our first podcast, right? Tell me a bit about yourself. I didn't know him. He's like, yeah, my dad was the healing man in Africa or Ghana or something. And he would heal people of blindness, of all these things.
Wow.
All the time. And he just glazed over. I was like, wait a second, bud. Back up.
You gotta talk about that.
Yeah. And for him, he said it wasn't weird because he was a kid. He didn't know any different. And I asked him how. And he goes, his dad said he never did it. He held the divine principle. Right. So I'm just curious on your perspective of going down. Okay, hold on. ETs, darkness, manipulation. This is all in the mind, right? Yeah. And it's a lot of mental and systematic suppression. And then we could go into archons and all kinds of crazy stuff. But then we've got the divine side of like the God, the oneness, we are all that. And now we're creating with this divine principle. I was just curious your thoughts on creating a connection with some sort of like divine principle using everything that we've learned, because it's a matter of focus, I think, right? So be aware of your own delusions. But once we can connect to this bigger thing and we can get into the Dr. Joe Dispenza realms, the manifestation realms, and like you and your family now, like you got beautiful kids, you got a beautiful wife, you know, that was you getting clear, and that shit matters to you. Absolutely. Right? And now you're in it, and now you're at a high vibe where this thing doesn't matter as much, where before you're, you know, scattered and in pain, and it starts with that vision. But I'm just wondering if you can add to that rant, if there's ever even a clear question.
No, I can. There's a lot there. So, so this is just my personal opinion and my personal belief. I don't feel, from what I've experienced in my life, from where I've been in the last like 20 years, 18 years, I really do look at my life before 30 and after 30. But I don't really feel that most men, women, or really anyone of this truly understand, completely consciously aware until you really do hit rock bottom, right? There has to be something in your life that happens to you that makes you really start second guessing the nature of existence. Okay. I don't think now you're kind of a star seed, at your age to have your soul's, awareness. You're obviously a rare bird, but there are a lot of guys now I'm finding like you, in their early 30s, who I'm actually now mentoring and stuff like that too, who are like you, who are very aware. So there are a lot more people like you, but I just because everybody knows my story. I didn't become aware, Matt, until I was I've always been a seeker, but I never was as aware of like what is and what's important about love and all that stuff until literally I hit rock bottom. Like I had to hit rock bottom. I had to be in that jail cell, in my opinion. And I had to have all these things happen to me to truly grasp the potential, and that's what's really weird is a lot of people think they'll watch me and you and they'll be like, oh, I'm not like those guys. Wow. They have such amazing personalities, or they're charismatic, or blah, blah, blah. But everyone is capable of this. This is not something that me and Matt have a gift. We can go on camera and we can talk. No, this is a will to want to do this. And if you have that, anyone can do this. You just have to just be free. There's some really smart mentors of mine have always told me that 90% of people are observers, 10% are doers. So why can't you become, if you are an observer right now and you've been an observer your whole life, why can't you be one of the doers? You can. There's nothing holding anyone back from doing. But going back to your question, it's so, to me, and again, obviously it's my opinion, but it's so critical, okay, to recognize that there's only two things in life, okay? There's fear and there's love. And when you operate out of your heart chakra in everything that you do and you try to serve other people, there's no possible way that you're going to have a bad life. It's impossible. There's just no way. The way the source creator has created the life field or stream that we exist in, regardless of the dimension, because we're in 3D. This is the matter realm. And the matter realm is probably run by bad people or bad beings, bad entities, right? But it doesn't matter, because if you are working and allowing your heart chakra to be your focal or your foci, that is what allows you in life to just literally continue to achieve, to serve other people, to continue to just do better and better, grow, have more abundance come into your life. I mean, I'm telling you, I know this because this is the choice that I made 5 years ago. I choose to stop judgment. And again, there's always ego. We live in the matter world. The ego comes in every now and then. But if you try to like catch it and change your state when you become egoic, your life just changes so much. And again, I hearken back to my own personal existence and looking at what's happened to me in the last 3 or 4 years. And this has all just been a product of me choosing to not worry, to not be fearful, to just do, to have a vision, to work with my heart chakra, to help other people whenever I could, to not be concerned about money. Now, I know we all have to pay our bills and this is the money magic system, but if you're focused on making money, it's going to block, because my great wife always says that what you resist persists, right? So you have to drop the resistance. You have to come from the heart chakra. If you live your life from the heart chakra and everything that you do, and again, your focus is on serving others, there's no possible way that your life is going to suck. Now, one other thing to say that, because a lot of people say to me, well, that's not true because so-and-so died, or, I had this happen to me. Okay, well, look, and this is also in my book, the true gift of life is the contrast. The struggle is what makes men and women become Superman and women. Okay. So resisting when you have bad things happen to you is only going to make it worse, and potentially other bad things are going to happen to you. So just let it go. Okay, this happened to me. My mom died. My wife got killed in a car accident. I lost my son, whatever. They're all horrible things, but don't resist them. Don't let those become a stain like on your soul, preventing you from, the abundance that life can now give you. Because I have learned, it's so true. Like I talked about, you have to hit rock bottom. You have to have bad things happen to you. When those things do happen to you, those are your greatest gift, because if you learn from those and propel forward from that, anything is possible, because that's when you're changing your DNA. Just like Dr. Joe says in the book, he talks about, this is crazy, by the way, he talks about that 85% of people by the time they're 25 are going to live the rest of their life the exact same way. They're going to have the exact same programmed feelings. They're going to feel and do and think the same thing. They're going to be 60 and they're going to feel the same thing and thought and feeling that they did when they were 25, because they don't know how to change their reality. They don't know how to have these bad things happen to them, and instead of reacting, be proactive around these bad things and embrace life and go beyond and take chances and risks and blah, blah, blah. So it's a fascinating book. I highly recommend, but that's the key. The key is when bad things happen to you, to not worry about them and let them define you. It's to use them to propel forward.
Amazing, brother. Man. Yeah. You dropped a lot of epic knowledge in there.
Thanks,
yeah, let me just process that for a second, because the fear to love thing for me is huge. What you're touching on is basically fundamental operating systems. One of them for me, I might have said on your show before, but enlightenment is 2 things. Number 1, 100% responsibility for every single thing that has ever happened or will happen to you. Yep. 2, you go from service to self to service to other. And if you can just kind of think, and then there's also, in the awareness of you serve yourself too. Like serving yourself is serving other. That just means like, if you like crafting, just craft away, because right. That brings you joy. And then you'll figure out a way, how do I serve others through my joy? Right. So it's this perfect synergy where everything's working together. And, if you just think about it from a big scale nature perspective, if you're in a part of something bigger, you're looking to improve your surroundings. Well, don't you think like a universal source is going to be helping you, whether it's nature or whatever, it's on your side. Yep. But we're so programmed on the fear base where we can't open up our receiving valves, right? Because we're afraid that if we can't pay our bills, then we're not going to eat and we're going to die. That's a real fear. That's frustrating. And then also you look at the news and everybody's going to shoot you in the face, especially if I'm in Canada. So maybe somebody shoot a hockey puck at me. So I'm fine. But you guys got to watch out for everything over there. Every time I come over, like, oh God, lock your doors, run away. It's like, come on, dude. And so, but in that loving space, that literally starts to shift your reality. And you can attest to this, that it's not that it's easy. You know, people are like, oh, how do you do that? If anything, it's even sometimes more challenging, but you know, it's the way that you want to live, and you're more fulfilled within yourself, knowing that you're contributing in the way that you want to contribute. You're honoring yourself in your life experience. And if you start acting in that way, everything around you is going to change. The people, the one thing I want to add though, just for people listening for clarity, I don't think you have to hit rock bottom. I think that rock bottom is a gift, because the way that I say it is like your alignment between you and source is your highest vision.
I would agree
with that. Your highest, truest, loving vision of how you want to contribute is like a straight line of non-resistance.
Right.
Just floating through life like a fairy on the crowd. Now, when you want to mess with life and go over here to do stupid things, it starts to create a tension. Right. Tension. And if you're not listening, all of a sudden the cord snaps. It maybe you lose your job, right? You lost your job and you were a millionaire. Now you're at the bottom. So now it's like, hey, you weren't getting the message.
Right.
You could have done the easy way. You didn't want it. Right. And so then boom. But then what you're saying is all of these challenges as opportunities. Right. And so in the Zen athlete, one of the things that I want to teach kids is that, you know, it's 3 fundamentals. You're taking a basketball shot, clear your mind. Somebody who can clear their mind and cannot clear their mind, it's a fundamental difference in consciousness.
Absolutely.
Step number 2, visualize what you want. Visualize the shot going in. So this means you get to create your reality through your own conscious effort. Mm-hmm. Step 3, you miss the shot. What's the most powerful and positive perspective you can have in that situation? You're walking down the street. Somebody says, Matt Belair podcast sucks and your beard is ridiculous. It's hurtful. What's the most powerful and positive perspective I can have in that situation? And if we can navigate our reality like that, right, that's a whole frame of how we're moving forward, how we're thinking, how we're collaborating, how we see other people. So,
well, I mean, no, I agree 100%. I'm glad you corrected me on that, because it is true. It's all, so life is about resistance. Like I just did a reading, Monica and I did a reading with somebody that actually met us in this Decoders of Truth a long time ago. And I just kind of forgotten about her. And I was on Twitter the other day and I just clicked on one of her tweets and it took her to her website. And she was talking about twin flames, and she's very, very knowledgeable, like incredible, deep resonation. And so anyway, I sent her a message. It was like, hey, you know, you wrote about twin flames. You know, my wife and I would love to get a reading from you. So to make a long story short, she read for Monica on Monday night this past week and gave her some profound wisdom. I mean, this woman is definitely connected. I mean, and you know, she markets herself as a psychic clairvoyant. So she literally has the ability to, you know, read cards and talk to you and really see you. And after spending an hour and a half with her yesterday on the phone, she's incredible. But she said, which I thought was like so profound, is that, you know, she agrees, obviously, what matters is love, right? Like if another person asks you, what's the most important thing to do? Or what's the most important thing to you in your life? Your answer, if you're truly aware, should always be, I want to be loved and I want to give love, right? Like that should be number one. I mean, obviously there's other little, you know, tertiary things a part of that, but that should always be, as a human being, if you're truly in service to others, that's really what you should want to be, because that's our greatest conscious co-expression, especially when we die, when our soul goes on to wherever it's going to go. That love is resonating in soul. That's the one thing you take with you. You don't take your cars, you don't take your money, you don't take your things. But so one thing she said to me that was my issue is that she says, you know, you've got a lot of amazing things going on in your life. Your wife loves you. You love your wife. You guys have all this great stuff. You're truly twin flames. But I'm reading your cards, and you still have a very powerful egoic attachment. And I'm like, you know, I'm sitting there going like, what are you talking about? You know, like, what am I attached to? She's like, I don't know. She's like, but that's on you to find out. So I thought long and hard about that. And the truth is that all of us, to truly become like one with source, one with our soul, to truly know our inner being, you have to have no attachments. Like literally you have to go through life with the whole, you know, the axiom that you have written about in your book, you know, is that so Taoist philosophy. Like you really truly do have to be able to react to anything that happens to you in your life, right? You get struck by a bolt of lightning. You win a $10 million, you know, lottery. it's got to be the same smooth, calm, no attachment to the outcome reaction. And once you can literally do that, that's almost, and I struggle to say this, but that's Christ consciousness. Like that's literally going through life completely oblivious to negativity, to fear, and just having a constant, like, you're just like this. You're just even keel and you don't have any attachment. And I really feel that probably 98 to 99% of humans, that's our biggest issue. We still have attachment. There's some expectation for what we do. And again, you can be an amazing human being, always in service to others. But if you have attachment to things, that's going to be that one thing that's going to always hold you back from truly, attaining spiritual enlightenment. And so anyway, when she told me that, I was very resistant to that. But then thinking about it yesterday, I was like, well, what would it be? And then I started thinking about all these different things. And there's just, being in the material world, being a 3D physical meat modem, it's hard to get rid of it, right? I mean, but there's, amazing yogis and there's, ascended masters, like that you're reading about, that's those people, they've gotten rid of it. There's no attachment for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Well, in Zen, that's one of the main fundamentals. It's everywhere in the highest level of spiritual teachings, non-attachment. Now it's challenging, and obviously, right? And one of the ways that I would say, for me with the Zen Athlete book, it would be like, okay, wrote the book, I'd like 10,000 sales, right? Was I near that? Nah, not even close. But it's setting a goal, but not saying my self-worth is on the line, right? Like I'm putting this out there the best I can. And when an interaction comes, if everything outside of you it's you're you control this thing. You control your mind, your body, and it's your vibration. And that's when we go into the dark side of things, which you guys are talking about a lot, is like the Archons and things like that. Look out. Well, then as I watch this TV and I watch the news and I listen to this person, as I'm understanding the information, my body begins to be fearful because it just said that the guy next door is going to murder me. So now my body is not in a coherent state. Right. Because I'd let this come in, and now, so everything outside of me is consistently messing with my vibration, with my coherence, rather than the other way around. Exactly. And that is self-mastery. That is getting into Christ consciousness. And this also doesn't mean that it doesn't ever happen. Like Yogananda, for example, he had it, but when they started messing with him and they said he was like touching, they said there's some sort of sexual thing going on with one of the guys. Yogananda is hurt. He's sad. You know what I mean? He struggled too. And he was a master because he's in it, but he didn't stay in it. And he moved through it. He didn't say this didn't happen and I didn't feel this. I'm human and I'm sad because I'm trying to help people. Now people are effing with me, and now the message isn't getting out there and it's tainting it. I'm sad. That's fine.
Well, dude, I have a good explanation for this. Like, when you're in 3D matter form, like we are right now, it's going to happen. There's just no way intermingling with humans and, going out into big cities and unless you live in a solitary existence in the wild where there's literally no contaminants, there's no endocrine disrupting chemicals. There's, you're just literally in like a preserved natural scenic area where there's no life for hundreds of miles. Other than that, it's impossible. And I hate to say this because, this will piss people off, not the people that watch our shows most likely, but most people. But if you're watching the content that's coming from the Matrix, the news, television, TV shows, even going on like popular internet websites, this is the stuff that comes into your brain that, like you just said, literally pollutes your consciousness. And as soon as your consciousness gets polluted, fear happens, and then you got Archons sitting right on your shoulder, ready to feed off of you. At the first sign of you panicking, worrying, like you said, can't pay my bill, and then it spirals, and then it snowballs, and then you're in a situation where it's like, dude, you're literally being fed off by Archons. I mean, like, Monica, and again, I go back to Dr. Joe D, but like, it's so true. How many people do we know, Matt, in our lives that when you meet them, all they ever do is talk about worry and fear, and they're literally anxiety riddled. They just have nothing but anxiety. And so it's like, you're literally like a feeding frenzy for whatever these beings are that exist in this three-dimensional universe, who feed off of like paranoia and fear and negativity and anxiousness and angst. And it's, and like, how many of these people that too that we see, they live their whole lives like that. Like Monica's mom, she used to say, Monica, if you care, you worry. Now imagine if you live your whole life literally thinking that is your mantra, that you have to worry to care about people. Now this where I'm going with this is what religion does to people. All of these human earth-based religions, and again, I'm not going to call out one over the other, they're all the same. Okay. They have a redeemer complex. You have to live your life in this pious, don't sin, subservient to Santa Claus in the sky. And then only then do you get to go into the pearly gates. I mean, that is what causes all these people to be fearful. Like literally, if you were going to put a gun to my head right now and say, well, what causes more fear than anything else in the world? I would say religion. And then from religion, you have the same hierarchy: politics, the media, the fake news, it just one step after. So, I mean, I'm saying all this because it goes back to what you say in your book. It goes back to what I'm going to be saying in my book, what I've always said. You have to remove yourself from the mainstream. You cannot be attached to the outcome of your friends, your family, all the people that are, normies who are into that. You can't be attached to them judging you when you pull yourself out. But pulling yourself out is your only chance at truly seeking a better path where you don't have fear ruling your life. Because I mean, there's no question, dude. If you read the newspaper, if you watch the news in the morning and watch the news at night, you are being preyed on and literally food for Archons. That's not me just making up a conspiracy story. That is a fact. All you have to do is read at any level, and you know that these beings exist in this dimension. And that is how they survive. And there are people out there way smarter than me that have actually said that the whole reincarnation cycle, that they've created technology, that's how they harvest and harness souls, that when you die, they now have all these tricks and stuff that goes on, come into the light or come meet your grandma or whatever who's dead, and then boom, your meat modem, you're pushed right back into another thing. And then they're feeding off of your fear and all the negative shit that comes from childbirth and the pain and suffering of the woman and the mom and all that stuff. So it's just, it's crazy to think about that. But I mean, like, while you're alive and you're here and you're watching this show and you're listening to this, you have to make a conscious choice to remove yourself from the mainstream. And however that may be, your church, watching television, dealing with people that are like, hooked into like political movements and stuff like that. Anything that is part of the mainstream, if you don't remove yourself from it, you're food for Archons. It's as simple as that.
Yep, man. Yeah. 100% agree with that. For my audience, the Decoders of Truth is like, yeah, we know that, from my audience, just to share, my perspective is like, we only perceive a small amount of the light spectrum. Yeah. Now, when I go into a deep meditative state or I lucid dream or I have an ayahuasca experience, it is,
it's out there
so beyond like this 3D that, that this is some sort of messed up, something is happening. And so the Archons, essentially, there's a ton of group of people, and myself included, believe that we're living in a system that kind of feeds these lower level entities that feed off energy. Yeah. And the energy is fear, because your body is emoting. It is releasing energy. If you go into like a room of people that just got traumatized by war or something, you would feel it and you'd be like, oh my God. And now you go into the most beautiful, high vibe, loving environment. You don't know anybody, but they're like, welcome, maybe Burning Man, you get a nice camp, like, come on in. It feels amazing. Yeah. So there's these levels of energy, but the ultimate understanding is that what this can allow you to do is, how do you feel from moment to moment each day? And if you're feeling fearful, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling scared, it's probably because you're looking at your external environment. You got to start sorting some stuff out. So one practical thing you can do is get your butt to nature, start getting around. Like, community is everything, right? Absolutely. The Decoders of Truth, I had to, send you a message because I posted a Nassim thing and somebody's like, oh, Nassim here means like full of crap. And I was like, and then he said he's in the Decoders of Truth. I was like, is this true? Like, is he full of crap? I don't know. I was like, I didn't think so. I just, yeah, right. And he wasn't even in Decoders of Truth. But I had to think, I was like, oh, interesting, because it's a group that I respect, right. And because it's not about shutting you down and you're a moron. It's right. Like, here's some other information. We're all doing the best we can, but does this piece of information help you live a better life? And this is kind of where I wanted to go with the side tangent, because when I got into the conspiracy stuff, it was about how do we stop war, sorted that out. Then I got into the Illuminati, obviously, then the bloodlines, and then the kings and queens, and then money, and then then I got to reptilians, and then I stopped because that was too much. But now, because like my friends already think I'm a nut, I'm not going there. Then a few years later, ayahuasca, some direct experiences, continue expanding consciousness. Now it's levels of ETs, aliens, dimensions, right. My own experience navigating it, but that source spark, we're all a part of this, creator. So I think that kind of where I wanted to go with it, the Decoders of Truth is really powerful group for looking at it. And then at the same time, with that contrast, we can start looking at, well, guess what? What happens when these things are removed? And they don't even need to be removed. We need 10, 20 people like Nassim Haramein and Dr. Joe Dispenza, which I love we're bringing up because I'm working with the Resonance Academy a little bit, helping them.
I want to talk about your Egypt experience before this is over.
Oh, yeah. And so everybody out there, Decoders of Truth, I just convinced them to do like $21 a month for membership for their stuff. So go sign up right now. It's the best. It's, I went through the whole thing, and you have the community, and it's a very loving, open community. But the thing is, what's possible when we start working together? I'm always hashtagging teamer. So, where do you see the possibility of the planet going? Like, you get 20 people working together, because when I'm talking to you and I'm talking to Nassim, and we're in Egypt, for us, it's like the new earth is here now. We have free energy. We have, food, Monsanto. So we could talk for years about Monsanto, or we could just build the solution and be like, cool, aware, nope, solution, and then share the solution. And this is what's going to build it. And I think that we're so lucky, because we're going to be living in times where there's clean everything, and we're going to choose it consciously. But we got to get out of the fear state first. We got to open up to collaboration. We got to open up. So how do you see it going? Let's say, we start working together and this starts to fan off, but what do you see for the future in a positive light for possibilities?
I mean, I see an amazing future. I mean, again, I do see the AI thing is a problem. There's, how that works. Rex, when I did that show, you mentioned with Gerald and Matt and Rex, we talked about that at the end. It was an amazing show, by the way. A lot of people watched it. It was a really deep show. And unfortunately we lost Gerald because he had bandwidth issues in Mexico, but I still think that the AI is a problem. I don't know how it's going to go to where it's going to go. I always bring up what Ray Kurzweil has said, which, we're so close. Ray Kurzweil has predicted that singularity would happen by 2033, right? Which is the emergence of humanity and machine, the AI, becoming part of us. It's very clear that the controlling forces of this planet, and again, you mentioned the Illuminati, the NWO, the transhumanists, the globalists, the cabal, there's so many names for them, whatever. But they're clearly pushing this androgynous AI human. Okay. Now, I don't know what that is the big picture for. A lot of people say, well, and this can kind of get into my books and stuff, because I make a lot of arguments with a lot of scientific data. I mean, it's very clear that they are making men weak. Okay. They are suppressing masculinity. They are emasculating men. They're lowering natural testosterone. They are lowering thyroid hormone. They're lowering, the whole hypothalamic testicular axis. I mean, they're basically making men feminized. Okay. It's in all the culture. It's in Hollywood. It's in, again, media and entertainment. It's not hard, as you know, to go out into a major city and look around and see dudes that look like women. Right. They have high pitched voices. They're in their early 20s. This is what's happening. So if you extrapolate that and where they're going with it, then, to me, they want a society that is easily controlled. I think it's pretty simple that's where they're going. But to what you're saying, is there good stuff happening? Yes, because there's never been a better in time in our history, at least in this timeline, right, that we know of, where technology was so great and we have this ability to create to consciously co-create so many amazing things, disease cures, sustainable lives and living and all these great things, alternative energy sources and fuel sources and all these things. I mean, it's all there. We know that, right? But there's this, like I said, this ruling Illuminati class that wants to hold on, it seems like, to the old power line, which is obviously fossil fuels and, depopulating and deforesting and doing all these things that are bad. So I just don't know if it's just going to be, like what Shane said, where we're going to have like me and you going down this path and the AI people going down that path, or is there going to be, a line in the sand and a war or a revolution or some sort of uprising? Hopefully it'll be a conscious uprising where that whole old school model just goes away completely, and that's what I don't know. I can't answer that question. I mean, I can only go by what I see, by the technology, by the push from the people that are in control. But to answer your question, yeah, dude, it's great times. I mean, it's amazing times. I mean, it's like, I tell people every day, it's like, I have friends from all parts of the world. I have people, there's probably more people that know who I am in Thailand and Singapore and Indonesia because of my books and the movement that I have than people that know me in America. So, I mean, 60 years ago or 80 years ago, that was not possible. So all this technology is a blessing. It's just, again, how do you utilize it? You definitely, in my opinion, you cannot wake up in the morning and go on to CNN.com or FoxNews.com and read that stuff and make that a part of your life. It should never even be a concern. Again, if you're going to be successful, and again, success is defined in a million different ways, but to me, success is by loving, to try to, be seeking spiritual alignment, walking the path, becoming more Christ-like. Then you cannot be connected to the mainstream. You just cannot. You have to go about your life and just do your thing. Now, obviously, there's going to be times where you have to be a part of it, right? Because whatever you do in your life, there's probably, information you need to know. And so you are going to have to be hooked into the matrix for certain things, but just don't make it a part. It cannot be a fixation. It cannot be like, I check the news twice a day on my computer and I come home at night after my job and I put my kids to bed and I watch 2 hours of Fox. I mean, you cannot do that stuff. You have to choose to do things, again, in service to others that are not hooked into the mainstream. Again, this is just my opinion, but that's how you truly are going to rise above and have your soul evolve. And I do believe that everybody's soul is evolving faster right now. And that may be due to cosmic energy. That may be something that Nassim can talk about, with the Residence Academy and stuff like that. But this is definitely a weird, not weird. It's good, but it's an interesting time in our species evolution with all the cosmic energy that's coming across the universe right now. And that's, again, why all this DNA changing is happening and why people are able to kind of wake up and be like, wow, I don't have to live this way. Or I don't have to, be who I thought I had to be. So yeah, I mean, my answer to you is that time, dude. It's just, I still don't understand and thinking it out. What is going to happen with what they want to happen, which is, again, the human becoming AI. I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, I think it's bad, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a lot of different points there. One of the things that I thought about, because from what I've seen and, gone down the spiritual path and looked at, some pretty out there stuff of timeline splitting. A lot of them talk about timeline splits. It's very common in the stuff that I trust and hear. And the way that I think about it, maybe it's like, I've given this example before where, like when I'm a teenager and I'm ego, right? And I go to the bar and somebody says something to me, so I fight him. And then the next week I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't fight the guy, right? And so I decide I'm not going to fight him. And then he calls me a pussy and then I got to fight him then. And then the week after that, I don't fight him, but I'm angry, right? Then the week after that, I'm like, oh man, I'm wondering what's wrong with you. I'm just thinking this, maybe I can get him a beer. His life isn't okay, but there's no energetic charge. There's no rage. But at that point, when I get to the non-energetic charge, that guy disappears from my life completely. So does he exist if we're in if I'm a multidimensional being living in a multidimensional reality? Could it be real for one person and not real for someone else? 100%. Right, people absolutely. Always talk about me traveling the entire world. Oh, are you worried about this and that? I have honestly encountered one asshole in maybe 8-10 years. I can't even remember. I have to really, it just doesn't happen. Now, is that because I keep my own consciousness clean? I think so. That's my guess. And then when I have contrast, I don't see it as this terrible thing. I see it as I attracted this contrast. I attracted this challenge. How do I show it love and compassion and deal with that thing, not as if it's the enemy. What is it in me that's sorting myself out? And then it doesn't become the same lesson outside. So this timeline fractal could be the same thing. You could go down, fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and getting low and low and low and attracting all these things. Or you could be like, what's my highest joy? What's my highest love? Boom, boom, boom. And literally you would have two different life experiences. If you could.
By the way, I agree with you 100%, Matt. And I wanted to add, in my travels around the world, which have been numerous as well, I've also never had an issue. Whenever people talk to me about how, aren't you afraid? Going into Mexico with the cartel, or going into this country with when we went to Spain, this year, there's infactional fighting. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm the same way, dude. And obviously I'm a physically impressive person, but like, I wasn't always physically impressive. It's literally, you're right. It's it's what you project. If you're projecting, like you said, highest joy and love, and you have a smile on your face, and you greet people with joy, and you shake their hand, and you look them in the eye, and you smile, and you say, how are you? How's your day? Or what's your name? I'm Jay. How are you? We've lost that so much, especially in the millennial generation today, because of technology, where they lack the skills of like one-on-one personal, communication. And again, technology is, unfortunately probably been the cause of a lot of that, but it's amazing how many people that today, right? Like, you walk up to them, you shake their hand, you look them in the eye, and you say hi or whatever with energy, and they're like dead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, and by the way, I wanted to bring this up so we didn't lose this point, because you made a really eloquent point, like to not the last time you spoke, but before, and I forgot. The gal that we did the reading with, and she blew my mind when she told me this, because I've always thought about this. She said that she had a near-death experience, by the way. So she's very, very connected with like the other side, and like she just knows. I mean, and I don't say that like in a woo-woo way. It's just like from speaking to her, she knows. And she said to me that, she said, Jay, you have to understand, there are many, many people on this planet right now that are soulless. And I said, come again? And she said, no, I really mean it. I said, they don't have souls. And I'm like, okay, well, so let's say I agree with you, right? Because I start thinking about all of these horrible things that are happening, Matt, right? And you and I talked about this before, but we'll just bring it up. We talk about all the pedophilia, the child sacrifice, all this horrible shit that's going on in so-called cults and elite circles and all this stuff. So wouldn't it be more realistic to believe that the reason some of this stuff happens is because the beings that are perpetrating these crimes don't have souls? They don't actually have a humanistic experience to understand that what they're doing is wrong. Now, I'm not giving them a pass, but if you think about it from a purely theoretical / intellectual standpoint, it makes sense. And so I asked her, I said, her name's Anna. I said, Anna, so what do you mean by that? Because, being a scientist, I'm trying to like attribute like a creation for that. And she's like, well, what if they were just cloning humans? What if they've been cloning humans for 40 or 50 years? And so what if there's so many of these people that are out there right now that were cloned for a specific reason, maybe to be a politician, maybe to be something of, authority figure in the matrix, that they don't rules like you and I do. So they don't have like human compassion and empathy. So anyway, it just made something, it kind of tweaked my mind, because I was thinking about like, what you said earlier about like, why are there so many people out there that are, are the way they are? And then we have so many people that are like us, like, right, like, having joy and spreading love and serving others. So maybe that is kind of a reality. And then it gets back into this whole quantum, fractal theory that you're talking about, where we have many different realities. Maybe there really are two versions. Maybe there's a version of a person that has a soul, and then there's right next to him in this other dimension that's so close that you can't really quantify, again, in the quantum world, that doesn't have a soul. So it's really mind-blowing to start thinking about that. But there's somebody sent me something, a tweet last night. There's a show on, and again, I watch almost no TV, unfortunately. I don't have time these days, but there's a show on that was talking about that. And I can't think of the show. I'll post it in the thing when I come up with it. But there's, I guess, a show on one of the reality television shows that is talking about this. They're saying it's kind of like a disclosure show, but they're trying to show that there are parallel universes, and that people can like go out and be in one universe and be in like have a whole like world and personality and humanistic experience in that world, and then be the opposite in the other world. So it's all crazy, dude, to think about that stuff.
Dude, well, you touched on so many points that I wanted to bring up. Well, Dolores Cannon talks about walk-ins, and I wish I could remember, but one of my friends posted this. It's like this. I don't know if it's a new religion. It's not like a religion. It's like a thought. It's supposed to be like ancient knowledge, and there's followers of this ancient knowledge, but it talks about that story. It says something about, aliens coming down, that there was bad ones, then good ones came in, because Dan Winter always says, he says, if the sun gods come in through the ray of the sun, you probably want to have a conversation. If they come in metal ships, maybe they're from the wrong side of the tracks. That's one of Dan Winter's things. So in this, I've really got to find it. Maybe somebody in Decoders of Truth can know what I'm talking about if I had to describe it. But I think it's like sun something. And it talks about the story of them coming and then starting to clone and then cloning again. And so I have just recently heard about this. And I was like, maybe. I don't know, but I know that I have one. And so then what can I control? And then that makes sense though, because, with people getting into this and, if I have a random discussion, depending on where people, I did a little video on like what woke is. And I remember this, what is it? What's the guy who's like so in your face when he does the conspiracy stuff? Talking about so loud and in your face. Yeah. So I had somebody's talking about Joe Rogan, where he has a little clip of him and he talks about multi-dimensional lizard aliens or something. And then Joe Rogan's over here at like a little one and it goes like, how woke are you? And he puts these little glasses. It's so great. But the idea is that like, I tell people from my research and knowing people like you going down the rabbit hole, this earth and what can happen in this dimension is darker than you could possibly imagine if you're willing to look at it.
Right.
And so it crippled
most people aren't though, right? Like Monica will never look at it. Like she'll just be like, I'm going to turn my head. I don't want to know. I'm like, So most people can't, I don't mean to interrupt your thought, but most people choose not to, which is fine. There's no judgment in that choice. But for me, and obviously you, it's like for us, like we go down that rabbit hole and all of a sudden the rock gets pulled back and it's like, oh shit, we're on a rocket ride through the dark.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to know what is going on, right? And so I look at it and holy crap, but it opens up all these realms and say, okay, well, if that exists, like it's like, well, now I know a lion exists. Or if you go into the oceans and there's a species down there, now it could be true, it could not be true, but if I have enough evidence that it is true, now that's just another option. I kind of know my experience and I open up my own awareness, my own consciousness. But yeah, when you get into the Dolores Cannon stuff, she says similar things. And so if this is the case again, it expands on what is possible. And then, we'll get into a little bit of Egypt with Nassim because, well, what if, and I've heard about that thing as well recently. I can't remember where, but when you die, we've been there's this net that we get our souls trapped and recycled into this dimension. And for me, it just made sense. And I was like, you mother effers. And now apparently we can go. And Dan Winter, again, physicist, mentored by Buckminster Fuller, is like, his whole thing is creating your aura, building up your auric field so you can take your plasma, your soul through death. And so, that's super important. And so if you had the ability to do that, so can you lucid dream? That's an example. So can you become aware in your dream, not freak out, navigate that space? Well, what do you think it's going to be like when you die? And if you have enough energy around you and awareness, that's what, Yogananda's mentor was teaching him, Babaji, I always butcher the names, yogis, they get upset, like Sri Yukteswar. It's like they're helping you on that other side to like, oh, you have enough consciousness to get beyond that. So that gets into some really deep stuff. And the last thing that I want to point out was the mental nutriments. The AI is focus. Okay. This is the way I understand it. I don't know where you're at with it, but artificial intelligence, there's nothing more precious than your awareness and focused attention. If you are looking at this, thank you so much. I appreciate you. My intention in this existence is to support you, to give information to the best of my real life experience here, to give myself my own freedom, love, creation, harmony with existence and everything. Now, if you're continuing, now if I get off this and I look at Reddit or I look at porn or I look at death I'm choosing that. And everything around you, you got to monitor your Facebook, your Instagram, things like that. cut it all out, because that is artificial reality.
Yes.
And you know what real reality is? Sitting your ass in the grass. Now They call that earthing.
Putting your feet in the sand or the dirt. Yeah.
Just be a real human, right? And so it's getting to that primal nature more, because that's real reality. And then the other thing is stop thinking, is to meditate. So important, because that's where the spirit comes in. That's right. You in harmony. So these are the, when we're looking at AI and the distraction and how bad it is, and news, it's mental nutriments. Be so fucking, I'm gonna say fucking, it's necessary. So fucking discerning with where you put your attention. Do you read, a novel on, mass murderers, or do you read a novel on, improving your health, right? That's your focused attention, and it's going to matter on how you navigate reality. So be so mother effing discerning with where you put your attention. And when you're putting it on these little clips, that's the art of distraction. That's mangling your brain.
Well, I mean, a lot of amazing comments you just made there too. I want to get to Nassim in a minute and your experience in Egypt. And let me just say one thing, and then I'll set it up perfect. Your culture, your generation is truly the first generation. And when I say your generation, everyone who's under 35 is technically considered a millennial from a generational standpoint. I'm the next generation. I'm Generation X, right? So if you're over 35, you're technically Generation X. If you're under 35, you're millennial. And then I think 18 and under is a new generation now too. I don't even know what they're called, but if you're 18 to 35, you are the greatest social experiment in the history of mankind. Okay. Mm-hmm. There have been many books written about this. The best book by far is Shadow Man by Dr. Anthony Napoleon. It's a brilliant expose on the social engineering of the internet generation, which is the millennial generation, and how you guys have been engineered to grow up with very minimal understanding of the past. It was, their history has been eradicated, all but eradicated pretty much from textbooks. And this is everywhere. This isn't just in Western thought, but this is pretty much everywhere. And then obviously you guys are obviously incredibly intelligent and manipulators of content and data, because you were using the internet when you were like kids. I mean, it's like to give people a comparison, I didn't even have the internet until I was out of college. I used a word processor with a green screen to type. I never even had the access to typing an email or writing up a paper or publishing a book on Amazon, doing all these things that I can do now. So it's truly amazing when you compare where people were 30 years ago versus where people are now, and the access to stuff. So anyway, to know that means that your generation has completely been engineered by technology, without question. So when you understand that, you can kind of see how that it's very easy to control the narrative now with every generation preceding, and even a little bit of my generation. Now, obviously, the average, I'll be 47 in February, but the average 46-year-old person in America today is not anywhere near the technological sophistication of someone like me. Like my wife, Monica, she has zero. She knows how to get on the internet. She can surf Facebook. She can send emails. She can text, but she doesn't know anything about building websites or doing all these other things that the average 21-year-old kid can do in their sleep, right? So when you understand that and you compare those type of things, it's a quantum leap from generation standpoint of understanding this stuff. So I can't get all angry when I get mad at millennials for who they are, because again, it's pure social engineering. Now back to Nassim. They just found that giant vacuum, right, in the Great Pyramid. And one of the guys in the Decoders of Truth, and everybody knows who he is, he's a famous author, and I think he's in South Africa, Wayne, and I can't think of his last name right now, but a lot of these guys that are watching right now know who he is. He just sent me his newest book, and it's a total decoding. And I'll send it to you. I'll email it to you. Just make sure you leave him a review on Amazon. But he's an awesome guy. And he says he has already knows without question that vacuum hole in the Great Pyramid that they just discovered is a portal. Without 100% doubt. In his book, literally, I guess, I haven't read it yet because he sent it to me last night, shows he decodes everything. This is what, trust me, when they open this up, if they ever do, and they make us aware of it, it's literally a portal. And, so then, his book argues about all the stuff that happened in the Persian Gulf War and why the United States invaded Iraq. And they were looking for, advanced weaponry from, the Sumerian times and the Egyptian times and stuff like that, and I'm sure a lot of these things were Stargates and wormhole technologies and all this stuff. But anyway, I wanted to set that up because you just spent a lot of time in Egypt with Nassim. Your pictures on Facebook were fantastic. I mean, honestly, dude, that's the one place in the world that I want to go. So so jelly of you. Like that's one place that if I don't go to before I die, that'll probably be one attachment to the outcome that I will harbor inside. Like, fuck, I want to go so bad. So what was it like, dude? Tell us about it.
Yeah, man. Well, that's fascinating. It could be, who knows, man. Oh my God. Because like I say to people, it's one thing to see pictures. It's one thing to hear what people say. And it's a whole nother thing to experience it. And for me, it was the everything. It was the fact of the group of people that I was with. I was literally ranked some of the smartest people on the planet, Everybody in there was a friggin' mathematician, physicist, fucking everything. And I was like, oh my God, geologists are like, it was just, it was ridiculous. And to hear the conversations that happened and the way that people were just looking at pyramids, because they intrinsically open up to bigger questions. Yeah. What is the nature of humanity? What is our real origin story? And something that you and I can agree on is that there's an ET origin story. Yeah, you know what I mean? That our traditional history, you and I, we look at 100 people that walk down the street. The way that we think that history happened is going to be different than 99%. If we see the person who agrees with it, it's like, yes, thank you.
I got a place for you to come. Let me give
How are you? Yeah. Right. So this is really exploring it. And okay. What else? All right. So what do I even say about this? You can feel the energy. So, I'm a bit of an intuitive, I can feel things. And so every time I put my hands on the pyramid or even just went into a meditative state,
you're just like,
energy surge through my body. Yeah. There was a place called Saqqara, and they have these, it's like a wall. And then in the wall, there's these squares, and you put your head in the square and it vibrates. Not like you got to be a psychic or an empath. Like you could be a random a-hole, just ate a cheeseburger. And just you need no training, and you put your head in it and you're like, what is going on? Like how are they doing that? And so then we get in underneath Saqqara, and it looks like there's so much there. So they're trying to figure it out. They have these the top slabs. I don't know the weight of them. It's ludicrous. And they have an unfinished one in where they dig it out and they make like a rectangle. They put in the box, and then they have a top slab that goes on. Well, on one of the ones that's unfinished, there's no space to get any tools in, right? Like how would they get it? It's unfinished. It's awkward. Like, how did they get it in? Because it doesn't really fit. And then because it's unfinished, how did they finish it without any tools? Because you can't get in there to do it. And so they're thinking that it needs to be some sort of device that will manipulate the matter so it becomes almost moldable, when you heat it up. And so you have these incredibly intelligent people who are working on Star Trek technologies, figuring out, trying to decode what's going on and how they did it, and looking for the clues. There's a guy, Alan Green, who does an amazing decoding with Dan Winter. It's on YouTube for free, Dan Winter and Alan Green. And he goes through how all the mathematical constants are in the pyramid. And there's a guy that's going to be coming out with a presentation about how we're going to get 3 more mathematical constants. And he hasn't released it yet. He did his first presentation there, and he said one of them will be for gravity, one of them will be for time, and the other one will be for magnetism. And he's not even a mathematician. It just happened, and it's a long story. I can't talk about it too much yet, but he's going to do an elective course in the Resonance Academy, and he just presented it, and then the mathematicians and everybody looked and was just like, he's like, that makes sense. Like, we're going to have to obviously look into it, but that's really freaking interesting. So it's like, we're getting the technology. Like, I can see that we're right there with these technologies that are ready to bring us to the next step. So then you could talk about going in the pyramid, man, going in. And we were doing like, and again, I'm not actually allowed to talk about everything that we did, but basically a group om. And like, when you gather with one or more person, it's powerful, right? What you can do with people who are caring and loving is powerful.
Amazing.
And I went, so we did like a ceremony with so we had the crystal. So here, these art crystals, I had William Brown on my podcast to talk about them. My whole
house is full of crystals, by the way. Now I have crystals,
Yeah, good. So I'll just say you got to look at the science. Art crystals is just coming out, but basically it's like some sort of, every time Nassim talks about it, all I can say is science. I don't know what he said. Something about shooting protons around a circle, but all I know is it took a lot of time, money, energy, and information. And with this crystal, they're charging water, then growing seeds, and they're growing 200 to 400 times percent larger, quicker, resistant to chemicals, and it's on the body. So I'm in this thing wearing this crystal. Plus I have like my other magnetic stuff on. I'm just like vibed up, you know what I mean? And like you're doing ohms and your body just goes
like vibrating like a million miles an hour, right?
It's gnarly. And you're in it and you're just like, what is this thing?
But what did it feel like when you were vibrating like that? Were you like almost out of body? Was it almost out of body, or was it you were in body?
So for me, I was in body, but I watched a few people do weird stuff and go out of body. They basically got connected to something. It wasn't faked. It was real because I was holding space at the one spot, right? And I was like projecting an energy field and doing my whole hippie.
Well, Matt, you know this, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's so important.
Go for it.
You're talking about it. They have pyramids in China, and this is totally closed off, communist control. We don't know anything about this, but David Wilcock has talked about this. Now, he obviously knows some Illuminati people that know about this, but they have people that are extremely sick and ill that go into these pyramids, and I'm sure they have to have money to get into these pyramids in China, and are completely healed. So we know that these pyramids are some sort of like, what's that word? I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but they have like technology that you're talking about right now that literally has the ability to completely heal the human physical body in matters of like minutes, like literally in minutes. There's so much.
Yeah, there's a guy, what's his name? Something Cook. It could be Fred Cook. I have to check it out, but he has a documentary on, it's like resonance, the healing power of resonance. I think that's
magnetic resonance. Yeah.
And I watched it after going there, and it's just saying that they built these things. You could just literally walk into them like a portal.
Right.
And because we are vibrational, this is we're 99.999% empty space.
Yep.
So it tunes them.
Yep.
And DNA code, So a lot of the trip was about, your initiation, your cosmic initiation to the stars. And I was like, if a spaceship comes to me tomorrow and picks me up, it's like they'll run me through a scanner, and this is like a check mark that they know I'm a good dude. You know what I mean? Because I got this like cosmic initiation. But that's what it felt like, man. And it's powerful. And there's thousands of these sites all over the planet. Thousands of them.
Let me ask you this, because I'm speculating on this, and you weren't, and maybe you're not allowed to answer this, and you can tell me. But when you went into those rooms, like we're so close now. Like I could feel your brainwaves like telling me like, Jay, whoever built this room was like 20 feet or taller, right? I mean, like you really felt that when you were walking in there, right? Like, I mean, because dude, you look at this stuff and you're like, wait a minute, come on. There's no way that these were built for people like us, 6 feet and smaller. I mean, these were literally built for Goliath, And I mean, again, we've had brilliant scholars that have come on podcasts in this group. Xavier Hayes, he's already written 3 books about the giants. This is not conspiracy or, nonsense. We know that there were species of giant humanoid beings on this planet. And I think, in my opinion, Egypt, the pyramids, the great Gobekli Tepe, or I can't pronounce the word, whatever.
Gobekli Tepe. It's so hard. I just found that it's so complicated.
Bro, they're literally built for 20-foot humanoids or taller. And if you start thinking about how we don't have the technology to build the pyramids even today, the only thing that makes sense is that there were 30-foot people, thousands of them, building the pyramids.
Yep. Well, dude, it's interesting. Like Hugh Newman, I just had on the podcast. He does a megalithomania. So he should come on the Decoders of Truth. He's awesome. And he talks about giants. One of his books is giants. And he went into the archives of the Smithsonian where researchers would write it down though. But he's like, you got to go find it. But it's like, you don't just write that down randomly. But it's interesting. Some of it, like the doorway's huge, which it looks like 20-foot people are going through, but when you're inside, then you're crawling in. Then you have to crawl. So you're just like, maybe they teleported in, or maybe it's just a device they turned on. Who knows, man? But it's like,
my guess is they teleported in, and they also made the passageways really small because the humans were the servants.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and apparently, you know, I there's nothing about slaves in the hieroglyphs, whatever. There's nothing. Yeah. It's just like I think it was like a co-creation, and what I could guess, like
it was their job.
Yeah. What I would say, they're built by, you know, technology, gravitational devices, things like that. And so Nassim is talking about how, you know, his next thing, and he thinks like for humans is to solve gravity. Because once we solve gravity, we're looking at quantum drives. And if you look at 1900, before that, maybe, you know, the day before is like flight's never going to happen. Well, we already went to the moon. I don't know. Do you believe, is the moon a conspiracy to you, or what? What's your story?
Well, no, I mean, I think it's already been decoded that the moon is a space station. It's like an artificial.
I've heard that. Yeah. So that's
like your artificial satellite. It's hollow. There's, you know, multiple species or what do you call it? You know, they talk about the secret space programs have. I mean, of course, listen. Episode, you know, most of the people in Decoders of Truth have seen it, but they already know that the moon is hollow. It's not a planet. It's some form of an artificial satellite or spaceship or something. But again, if you understand all of the spin and the polarity and all of the plate tectonics of the moon in its relation to where it sits based on between the Earth and the sun, it's a theoretical impossibility to be a planet. So it clearly has power. It's being powered to stay in its orbit the way it's designed. And again, this Ancient Alien show showed that it was, or they decoded that it was put there to shield the Earth from debris. And that's why it has all the Swiss cheese giant, you know, holes and craters all over it, because it's been getting hit by cosmic debris for eons. You know, so I mean, and obviously it serves other purposes too. I'm sure it's a way station or a space station or an outpost or something. But yeah, dude. But I wanted to go back to something you just said, because Nassim, obviously, you know, I bow down. I'd love to meet that guy. I would love to talk to him. I'm very familiar with his works. But I mean,
I might have got you hooked up.
Dude, you're the man. That'll be my great day. We can talk off the air. But like when he says that, you know, the next thing is conquering this, I mean, he's just joking, because this stuff has already been conquered. They already have all of these technologies. We just don't have access in the quote unquote public. So when he says that, I just wanted to make that clear for the group that he's talking about for us and not for, you know, whoever they are, because they have that technology. They've been traveling through the universe and moving time, the Mandela effect. I mean, the whole movie, I've said this a million times, the Interstellar movie with Matthew McConaughey was about time travel. Now, most people don't understand that that was a cipher, but that's what that movie is about. They're basically telling us that they have been traveling through time in the secret space program since probably the 40s or the 50s. There's a lot of great researchers, Joseph Patrick Farrell, you know, Bill Mars, who just died. They all talked about this. The technology is out there. You know, it's already been like in a lot of the highest level university systems. They've already broken down, you know, quantum mechanics and how, you know, how you travel, you know, gravitic technology, anti-gravitic technology. They've been doing it for 50 or 60 years. We just don't know about it. It's all covered up. Yeah.
Us getting it, the people getting it, right? Yeah. Free, actually a free galactic species to get. You know, I had him on my podcast, and he said something really fascinating at the end. I asked him for 3 things to change the world, and when he was talking about it, they were beautiful things. I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but at the end, he said something like, you know, if we can do this and become a peaceful species, they're going to lift the arms ban, you know, here. And then this actually has galactic implications.
Yeah, right.
As in like, and I've heard this from every next level source that goes beyond me. It's weird because like when I go to the sources that I trust and we get into the highest level stuff, they never disagree with each other. And one of the same constants that I've seen is that there is some sort of, we're in containment ideally, and there's something with the fact that whatever happens here is going to affect everything. Like everybody is watching. Right. I've heard of that. You know, this experiment, everybody's watching. What we do is going to affect everything. And I think that it goes back to, you know, the thing that I want to explore a little bit and always do is like just the nature of our consciousness and really commanding that, because you're co-creating peace or love or fear or death on this, but through your thoughts, We know this. You're consistently perpetuating it. So as a group, to clean this stuff up, to really build the new earth, because if you stay with your trauma and this thing and that thing, you don't have any energy to build the new thing. You need a lot of energy to build a new house, to build that new vision, to create a loving environment. If you're stuck in this low vibe, you can't build it. And we need more people to take responsibility for themselves, to become a sovereign being and co-create and live fearlessly in love, man, because then that stuff becomes obsolete, because we're working with the bigger force, the divine source, the nature. We're working with nature, and we can only be slaves now if we choose to be. That's what I think. I think with all this thing going out there, if you make the conscious choice to connect with your heart and source, whatever way you want to do that, and be of service, now you got nature on your side, and none of this is going to affect you if you take responsibility for yourself. Maybe through your own path, you'll get it here and there, but that's bumps in the road. That's life. You're going to get them. It's how you perceive them.
I agree 100% with that. I was just going to go back to what you said, though. Nassim's right about the galactic, once we can remove the armband. Listen, it's very simple to me. There are not enough people like Matt and Jay in this world. So the truth is very simple. If the good guys, and again, I won't name names, all these, crazy people that say they channel things, the Pleiadians and all these different beings and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure they are out there, and I'm not making fun of them. But the truth is they are watching out for us, because, bro, we have very horrifying bad people on this planet that are in control of the missiles. And the missiles would have been flying a long time ago if they weren't being kept in their silos. And we have proof. Ancient aliens, there's multiple books, there's multiple stories from multiple people in the United States and other foreign militaries who have watched balls of plasma, the same orange balls that you've seen in your life, disarm the missiles. They stop them from launching. They just appear and stop them, and poof, they're gone. So clearly there are divine brothers, good guys, angels of light, guardians of light, whatever, watching over us, preventing us from destroying ourselves. And I really do believe that they came here as soon as we blew up the first couple nuclear bombs back in the 40s, 50s, because they knew that, a previous timeline of human beings had nuked ourselves to shit, right? Like, we know the whole desert in Africa and in Turkey and a bunch of the Arab parts of the world is obsidian below the sand. It's glass from where the nuclear annihilations happened. So we know we've nuked ourselves into nothing already. So these beings are like, nope, Earth is too full of natural resources. It's too good of a place. There's too many species here trying to exist. There's all this DNA tweaking. We're trying to develop, higher species. They're not going to allow this place. This is my opinion, obviously, but obviously based on a lot of research, a lot of evidence, they're not going to blow this place up. That's why whenever I hear people talk about, war is coming. Well, maybe a ground war. Maybe they'll do shit like they did in Vegas, all these false flag attacks, but they don't have the capability to nuke this place. They just don't. There's too many conscious, higher level beings that are like, nope, you're not going to be blowing up atoms. You're not going to be devastating the rest of the world. You're not going to be changing the solar system. It's not going to happen. So again, that's my opinion, but I don't see it happening. I really don't.
Well, I certainly agree with you. So, I got to phrase it gently here because of just because. But David Lombert Senepas, who was on my podcast, who I swear to God appeared as an orb to me and told me he was going to do it. He just said, "Look at the sky tonight. You may or may not see something." As that Arcosani orb. I
remember you telling me that.
So close to me, man, for like 40 minutes. Like, okay, cool. Talk to him the next day. Yeah. So, in conversations, we have very interesting conversations. But when the North Korea was going on, I called him the one day, and he's had to go into hiding actually a few times since I've known him. And he goes, yeah, like we shot down. We had to there was a missile fired today, and they shot it down. And he says he's connected to the Vegan star system, and he is the native elder for the Mi'kmaq nation.
Right.
I know the elder of the Zuni nation. They both say the same thing. Star people, star nations. We've known about this forever. Absolutely. It's just dum-dums that don't know, that are trying to come in and teach us this false indoctrination, and we're like, we're not having it. And that's is an oral tradition, right? It's so sacred to have one to another, so you know that information is getting passed.
It's the correct information. It's not fish stories, right?
And so the other thing too, when I've had the deep conversations with the Zuni elder, he's like, we're still not ready. The tribes are talking about this, and some of them are saying, get out to the public, tell the white man the truth. Right. And some of them are saying they're not ready yet. They're not. So there's actually a bit of a turmoil going on in there to be supportive, right? Some of them are pretty fucking pissed off because of what we did to them. And so they're like, screw them, just, and some of them are like, you know what I mean? We got to get to forgiveness of all beings because it wasn't all of them, you know what I mean? And so the Zuni, when we were at this conference, he's just like, we have stuff. We have the stuff that is going to be, nobody's going to dispute it. And so it's funny because you touched on a few things like false flag attacks. Somebody listening to my podcast might be like, oh, well, the Vegas thing, you and I both know you can look at it. Something doesn't smell right? So that's why for me, I'm lucky because I can just go, Jay, what's the deal with this? And then you send me the link and I get it sorted. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So for my listeners, just go into the Decoders of Truth, be cool. And that's where you can just post a question and you'll get it sorted and just take the info. And one smells right, one smells a bit funky, and so do your thing.
Well, when you're aware, when you're aware, you just have to discern what resonates with you. Might not resonate with someone else, but when I always say this, when you're truly aware, you know what is right and what is wrong. You just do. It's internal knowing. It's like when you're connected to what's within, which is God, creator, source, the energy spark, the holographic soul, whatever you want to call it. So my, default to my wife, she always says that, like, how many times in your life have you gone against your gut and it was a mistake? Because your gut is God. Your gut is your inner knowing. That is what is telling you. And it's always right. It almost never is wrong. I mean, we make it wrong by how we fear and we create, all this belief off of it, but our gut always tells us. So if you listen to your gut, if you can talk to your gut, if you can, again, through meditation, through mind stillness, that's the answers are always there. So you do know when you're allowed to just clear. Okay, that makes sense. Like you said, that resonates with me. I understand that. And I believe that, but people that are not aware are automatically, I hate going down this path, but they're automatically never going to understand what we're talking about and literally look at us as we're crazy conspiracy tinfoil nutters. I mean, that's just the way they are, but you can't allow those people to have any effect in your life. I mean, obviously I always say, and these guys know in the podcast, when I speak on the Decoders of Truth, I always say those people cannot be a part of your life. And that has to be a conscious choice of you and your bearing and your living, your life stream to not be involved with those people. Because again, if they're going to judge you, sure, it's no problem for you, but you can't live in harmony by being around people like that. You just can't. And again, that's your choice. It's always a choice, right? But like you have to choose to be around people that are supportive of who you are as a human being. And that's, again, always a choice. You don't always have to default. Like if your family judges you, you don't have to be with them. It's not this whole religious construct, right? Blood is thicker than water. It's not true. What's true is what resonates inside you. But yeah, dude, this is interesting. This has been a fascinating podcast, dude. It's fascinating.
Shit, I had such a point that I wanted. The second point that I'll make is the one that I remember. Hopefully I'll remember it, but it's like tokens of energy, right? It's all about energy. Yes, I remembered. Okay. So what I've been going on lately from what I can discern on the gnarliest stuff, and this just makes sense, is that my body came here and it has its own agenda, Right. And so they say the walk-ins, everybody wants the body. That if you have a body, you hit the multidimensional lottery if you get a body with a soul. The people want that, apparently.
This is an amusement park, right? It's a matter of amusement park. Right.
So then just think about it, because I wrote an article that got published on Face the Current, which is a cool magazine. Check it out. So I was stoked on that. But the next one I did, it was on intuition. And so, well, because we only perceive these tiniest amount of the light spectrum, like nothing. And so you can blow a dog whistle and he'll freak out and you're fine. So we think realities are 5 cents, which we distort with our mind, which we don't even see clearly. Like at best, we're like in a blizzard with like glasses on, and
Eight
you know, we
feet
just
tall,
got maced. We got maced in the face. You know what I mean? That's about how
At
good
best.
we're perceiving. Yeah, at best, right? But the body, because it knows, the body can sense way beyond. The unconscious mind is picking up incredible bits of information, and it's telling you through how it feels because it can't communicate.
Yeah.
Now the mind's thing is to problem solve. The mind is like, oh, if I have to, you know, solve this and build a boat, I can use my logic. But, you know, one of the examples I give is like right now we're in a public space and, you know, all of a sudden a lion comes. All of a sudden, every single one of us is a parkour pro and we jump a tree and, you know, we're hanging from it. And when we're safe, we're going to hold and be like, what just happened? And then our mind will come in trying to figure out what the F just happened. But the body got us out of there. And
exactly
even before that, the body would have said, hey, something's up. Something's up. Something's up. I know something's up. And the body is like, you idiot. I'm trying to tell you. Right. And so when we listen to our gut, we're listening to our body as its own form of intelligence, which I find a very fascinating concept to like give that respect to my body and love your body. Thank you.
Well, let me just stop you right there because you just brought up something brilliant. The newest thing, you know, I just came from the seminar 2 weeks ago with all these doctors, the top doctors in the world. The newest thing is the brain of the gut biome, right? Like they know the human gut microbiota has a brain. And the brain of the gut is exactly what you're talking about.
100%. So, well, I was actually going to say this about Dr. Joe too, but you know, the yogis are like the brain or the stomach is the second brain. Some of them even say it's the first brain. Now for the people in my show that are, you know, I think they're pretty good. They've come with me for a while, but for the Archons thing, Dr. Joe at his advanced one was just sitting there and he's just like, and I knew when he did the 3-day, I knew he was holding back because I know he's in the multidimensional realm. I was like, give me the good stuff. You're holding back, and because it's like doctors and people are skeptical, so he's keeping it all science.
Right.
And I was like, lay it on me, bro. I know you have stories. And when he's talking about doing this pineal gland activation meditation, he's like, I debated whether to tell you this, but as you go through the cobwebs of your being, you might encounter something. Maybe. And he's like, don't freak out. It's okay. It's kind of like a parasite. You can just take it off, right? You're kind of like a free dog, but he knows it. And you know, he only gave a few examples of his stories, but he talked about, you know, after he did What the Bleep Do We Know, I think, deeper down the rabbit hole. And he was at a crossroads in his life, and he had this experience in his meditation where all of a sudden he went back in time. And he does the difference between time, space, and space time. I'm starting to rack my head around that, and he's doing his best to explain it. But what he said was, I was viewing myself back in kind of like Roman times, and I was a philosopher teaching philosophy.
Right. Apparently, he talks about that in his book. He talks about that.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he does.
Amazing. Yeah. So then all of a sudden he gets like strung up and tortured. And he's viewing himself being tortured while feeling being tortured at the same time. Now that may seem mangled, but again, because I've been in these spaces where your reality breaks, that becomes a total possibility. And so that was the reason why he didn't want to do what he did, because he had trauma in the past from it. I can't remember where the heck I was going to go with that. But just to show that we're opening up levels of awareness and possibility. And that puts, again, the ball in your court as the creator. And you got to watch where you're being distracted with baloney. Take control of your own consciousness. Take control of your own body. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the outer is what they refer to in Buddhism as mental nutriments.
Right.
If you're eating CSI as your mental nutriments every day, you're going to get a CSI result. If you're eating Fox News mental nutriments, you get a Fox News result. And that's up to you. That's your right. Not up to me to say it's good or bad. you're going to get a different result.
Well, look. I mean, that's a great point. Like, I have removed all popular culture paradigmal stuff in the last 2 years. And I don't think it's any coincidence that I've had the greatest increase in my spiritual awareness, in my productivity, in my businesses. I mean, every part of my life is skyrocketed. And it's not, I mean, again, there's no coincidence in life. For me, when you remove yourself of the fear, because that's what all of that is. It's paranoia and fear, period. End of story. There's nothing else but fear and paranoia. It's designed, a lot of people say news is fear porn. Again, if we're going big picture, if these people that are in control are creating a society or a matrix, a holographic simulated reality that's designed to feed these beings, these what you call amoebas or organisms that Joe talked about, dude, that's the Archons. These things literally are physical amoeboid energy beings, like you said, that feed off of this paranoia and this negativity, and they're everywhere. And the saddest part is, you can be Christ consciousness 95% of the day of your life. And in that 5% of the time that, like you said, somebody insults you or something bad happens to you in your life and you physically have a reaction, they're like a moth to a flame. They're everywhere. So it's so hard to avoid them. So again, knowing that you really can't avoid them, it's the ability to change your state and to just, again, have that, is that so mentality, the conscious Taoist belief system of just like, whatever happens to me, I'm okay. I'm not going to get too high. I'm not going to get too low. I'm just going to be smooth and even keel. That's how you can get rid of those things. And honestly, I do believe too, that eventually those beings aren't going to come around you if they know there's no way they can feed off you. They're smart. They're going to go to where people are going to stay and remain fearful, remain anxious, remain paranoid, and just live that life like that. And again, there's so many people like that. So don't live that life. And unfortunately, we have to end this podcast because I have to jump onto another podcast. But dude, this has been absolutely spectacular, famous, amazing. Guys, I'm sorry we didn't do a lot of questions. I know a lot of you guys are in there. But what I'll do is, Matt, if you can jump, let's do another one, like if we can't, maybe next week. And we'll just go live. We'll set it up and we'll just answer questions. And I'll just get questions from these guys and they can ask you, because I know they have so many questions for you for Egypt.
Yep. Yeah. 100%, man. Yeah, I know it's so good, man. Cause I'm over here, just like, there's so much more. It's such a privilege and honor to talk to you.
The guy that I'm going on a podcast with next, his name's Jeffrey Doherty. I'm going to introduce you guys, cause I think you want to have him come on your podcast. He's called the Christian Whistleblower, and he's actually an ex-Pentecostal minister who knows the Bible backwards and forwards, who literally woke up, dude.
Yes. See, the force is happening, bro, man. The force is happening.
I'm going to send you his books. He's written 4 books or 5 books maybe, but he's got an amazing YouTube channel and a big audience, and he's just brilliant, and him and I have really hit it off, and I'm going to go on a show in a minute here. I'm going to get you guys together podcast because he's like, wow.
I'm in. Yeah. Any recommendation, I'm happy, man. So yeah, brother. Well, for people who are listening on my side and going to go to the podcast, where do people find out more about you?
So many places. TR2revolution.com is my main site. You can find my books on Amazon. The newest book is The Metabolic Blowtorch Diet, which is a book on optimizing intermittent fasting. It's also an Amazon bestseller. It's been out since the end of September. It's an amazing book. You don't have to be a fitness person. You can be actually in poor health and embrace that mindset of fasting and utilizing fasting and change your life. And then my next book, which is coming out soon, which is literally the greatest book, my greatest creation that I will be forward, is the Advanced TRT Manual. But it's not just optimization; it's about life. It's over 400 pages, over 600 research citations. It actually has a chapter in there for women. So it's going to be January, but you can find that, I think, advancedtrtmanual.com. You can go and get on the waiting list.
Yeah, brother, 100%. Go there, check out his stuff, because Jay, the more I know about him, the more his research is ridiculous, and just so glad that you're, in my life to kind of help me navigate this crazy Mayan illusion, but, steer towards love and clarity and truth. So, I appreciate you and honor you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
I love you too, brother. Thank you so much. And it's the same right back at you. Every time I spend time with you, and I look forward to next time we can break bread together.
Sounds good, man. Love it.
Let's see. Let's just end the stream.